Give the floor to the distinguished representative of Mauritania on behalf of African states.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Mr. President, I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the African Group. The African Group welcomes the President of the Human Rights Council, His Excellency Mr. Baudelaire Ndonga Ella, to the General Assembly and wishes to extend our appreciation for the opportunity to engage in a general debate on the activities of the Council presented in document A/69/53 and its addendum 1. The group commends the President for his leadership and commitment to the work of this august body during his mandate, as well as his professionalism and constructiveness and transparency with which he conducted the work of the Council. The group wishes to express its continuous support to his endeavors. Mr. President, the African Group wishes to reaffirm the Council's mandate as contained in UNGA Resolution 60/251 in promoting universal respect for protection of all human rights and fundamental freedom for all without distinctions of any kind and in a fair and equal manner, and make a recommendation thereon. It is on this basis that the group has been consistently supportive of the work of the Council. The group views the principle on which the Council's mandate is underpinned as extremely important, particularly with respect to the principle of cooperation and genuine dialogue aimed at strengthening the capacity of member states to comply with their human rights obligations. It is therefore incumbent upon the Council in discharging its mandate to firmly ground its work on universal objectivity and non-selectivity in the consideration of human rights issues. The group is of the view that the universal participation of all UN member states in the work of the Human Rights Council is a paramount importance. In this regard, the group warmly welcomes the establishment of the voluntary technical assistance trust fund to support the participation of least development country and small island developing state in the work of the Human Rights Council. The group further welcomes the steps taken for the operationalization of this fund, including the facilitation of the participation of experts from capitals in the Council sessions. The group would like to encourage the President to ensure that more African countries benefit from this fund. Mr. President, the African Group is convinced that the Universal Periodic Review, UPR, remains the most distinct mechanism of universal application to assist states in fulfilling their human rights obligations. In our view, this mechanism remains relevant and key towards the promotion and protection of human rights. The group would like to reaffirm the need to preserve the comparative nature and principle of dialogue of this mechanism. The group firmly believes that it is critical that the UN Voluntary Trust Fund for financial and technical assistance for the implementation of the UPR recommendation be properly resourced for the purpose of assisting states to develop national capacity and expertise for the implementation of the accepted recommendation. While the African group reiterates its support for the mechanism and social procedures of the Council and the important work they undertake in the promotion and protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms, the group believes that there is a need for the rationalization of this mechanism and special procedures in order for them to be effective. The group would like also to emphasize the need for the procedures to comply with the institution building package, the code of conduct of mandate holders, and the terms of reference of their respective mandate. Mr. President, the Council has in recent times faced governance challenges, particularly with respect to the erosion of the provisions of the institution building package, which is the solid foundation on which its mandate rests. The group is concerned that this erosion could in the long run present credibility gaps in the work. Whilst the group has also noted the immense work that the Council engaged in at each session, the challenges presented by shortage of funding remains unresolved. The African group believes, therefore, that this funding shortage will affect the implementation of the decision and the resolution of the Council. We also wish to recognize the key role played by the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights as the Secretariat of Council in ensuring that appropriate support is given to the Council in line with the framework UNGA Resolution 48/141. The African Group took note of the High Commissioner's appeal made during this general debate. The group would therefore like to underline the necessity for activities mandated by the Human Rights Council to funded from the regular budget. Mr. President, the annual report presents comprehensive the resolution that were adopted by the Council during its yearly deliberation. The group is also cognizant that the provision of UNGA Resolution 60/251 operational paragraph 5I, which provides for recommendation to be made by the Council to the General Assembly. Hence, its support for the universal membership of UNGA to deliberate on these important matters. Mr. President, 2014 was marked by the preparation for the 20th anniversary of the International Years of the Family, which the General Assembly will celebrate this year on December 3rd. The preparation for its observance has centered on poverty, work, family, and intergeneration solidarity, themes as well as the various and multidimensional challenges facing the family. The African Union adopted the African Union Plan of Action on the Family in 2004, and in 2012 adopted the African Common Position on the Family on the 20th anniversary of the International Years of the Family. The group reaffirms that the family is the natural and fundamental group unit of society, and it plays a critical role on the development and the mending of the social fabric therein. In this regard, the group reaffirms its call to the UN Working Group on the post-2015 Sustainable Development Goals to include the important role of the family in the achievement of Sustainable Development Goals. We must continue directing our efforts toward strengthening and protecting the family by relieving the plight of members of every African family, particularly women and girls living in poverty. Mr. President, in this regard, the African Group salutes the adoption of a Human Rights Council Resolution 26/11 on the protection of the family on 26 June 2014 and looks forward to the summary report on the panel discussion held in September 2014 on the challenges and best practice on the protection of the family. We urge member states, the United Nations system, and non-governmental organizations to continue to devote special attention and resources to protect the family as a natural and fundamental group unit of society in accordance with Article 16 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Mr. President, the African Group is strongly concerned by the attempts to impose new notions and concepts that are not referenced in international human rights law. The principle of non-discrimination and equality are two faces of the same coin. They are indeed cross-cutting principles in the vast areas related to the full realization of all the human rights and fundamental freedoms for all. Such principles are well entrenched in the Charter of the United Nations and international agreed human rights instrument as they all reaffirm the faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of a human right, of a human person, and in the equal right of men and women without distinction. Mr. President, in this context, we are seriously concerned at the attempts to introduce to the United Nations some notions that have no legal foundation in any international human rights instrument. We are even more disturbed at the attempts to focus on certain persons on the ground of their sexual interests and behaviors, while ignoring that intolerance and discrimination regrettably exist in various parts of the world, be it on the basis of color, race, sex, or religion, to mention only a few. Mr. President, the adoption of the resolution 27/32 entitled Human Rights, Sexual Orientation, and Gender Identity, adopted 27 September 2014, is an illustration of these attempts. The group is therefore concerned that non-internationally agreed notions such as sexual orientation and gender identity are given attention to determinate of issue of paramount importance, such as the right to development and the racism agenda. The group particularly deplores the obstacle put to the advancement of the work of the Intergovernmental Working Group on the follow-up of Durban Conference on Racism, as well as the Working Group on the Right to Development. Mr. President, our alarm does not merely stem from concerns about the lack of legal grounds, or that the said statement delves into matters which fall essentially within the domestic jurisdiction of a state, counter to the commitment in the United Nations Charter to respect the sovereignty of a state and the principle of non-intervention. More importantly, in arises owing to ominous usage of those two notions, sexual orientation and gender identity, We affirm that those two notions are not and should not be linked to existing international human rights instruments. We believe that people are not inherently vulnerable, but some individuals are groups find themselves in vulnerable situation due to a number of factors, including the socio-economic setting they live in. Such individuals and groups are, for example, women, children, the elderly, people with disabilities, people under foreign occupation, refugees, asylum seekers, and internally displaced persons. Mr. President, we strongly deplore all forms of stereotyping, exclusive stigmatization, prejudice, and intolerance, discrimination, and violence directed against people, communities, and individuals on any ground whatsoever, wherever they occur. We also reaffirm Article 29 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the rights of member states to enact laws that meet just requirement of morality, public order, and the general welfare in a democratic society. Mr. President, we recognize that the enumerated rights contained in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights were codified in the subsequent international legal instrument. We note with concern the attempts to create new rights of new standard by misinterpreting the Universal Declaration and international treaties to include such notions that were never articulated nor agreed by the general membership. These attempts undermine not only the intent of drafters and signatories to these human rights instruments, but also seriously jeopardize the entire international human rights framework. We also call upon all member states to refrain from attempting to give propriety to the right of certain individuals, which could result in negative discrimination on the expense of their internationally agreed rights, and thus run in contradiction with the principle of non-discrimination and equality. Mr. President, we call upon all member states to continue and step up their efforts toward the total eliminating all forms of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance. Mr. President, we also urge all states and relevant international human rights mechanisms to intensify their efforts to consolidate the commitment to the promotion and the protection of human rights of everyone on an equal footing without exception. Mr. President, in conclusion, the African Group wishes to reassure you, Mr. President, our support in preparation of the 90th cycle year of the Human Rights Council, and I thank you for your attention.
I thank the distinguished representative of Mauritania. I now give the floor to the